today I'm back behind the wheel of the new Citroen C3 Aircross to spend some more time with it, get to know it a little bit better, and hopefully drive it in some slightly better weather. Why do I mention better weather? Well, the last time I drove this car, the weather was absolutely horrendous. Honestly, it was boat weather. This time though, I thought, it's later on in the year now, so the weather will be getting better. It should be warmer. And what do you know? The night before this car arrives, snow descends. Snow. It dropped from 10 degrees to -2 overnight. So my idea of having slightly better weather for this car didn't really work out. Anyway, let's put the weather to one side for a moment and concentrate on the car. As I said, it's the new Citroen C3 Aircross. It's Citroen's first SUV, but it won't be their last, because before the end of the year, this car will be joined by another car, the C5 Aircross, which will be slightly bigger. But for the time being, this is the only one they've got. Before, when I was driving the Aircross in that horrendous weather, I was driving the petrol. I was driving a 1.2 litre with 110 brake horsepower, and that's the model that Citroen predicts is going to be their best seller. Although personally for me, if I was going to get a petrol one, I'd get the 130 brake horsepower engine, which is still a 1.2, but it's got more power. Surprise, surprise. This time, I've got the 1.6 litre diesel. It's got 100 brake horsepower, 151 foot-pounds of torque. 0 to 62 miles an hour takes 12.8 seconds, and the top speed is 109 miles an hour. Hardly riveting performance figures. Put your foot down, and it takes a while for the torque to build. And then when it does, it's a surge at about 2,000 RPM between 2,000 and 2,500. And then after that, from 3,000 onwards, it's pretty flat. You've got to rev this engine quite hard to get anywhere. 0 to 62 miles an hour, 12.8 seconds, yes, that's quite slow, but beyond that, actually, having to rev this engine quite hard, it's actually quite noisy. It's noisier than I was expecting it to be. It sounds a bit too similar to a van for my liking. And if I'm honest, I don't really see why you would buy this engine, this 1.6 litre diesel, with this much power, because you can also get it with 120 brake horsepower rather than 100. And to me that makes more sense. Yes, I mean, this 100 brake horsepower engine will get 70 miles per gallon compared to the 120 brake horsepower's 68. But does that really make a huge difference, really, in the real world, when actually, in terms of performance, not only has it got more power, it's got more torque, but it will get to 62 miles an hour 2 and a bit seconds faster than this will? And I'm not saying you're buying a C3 Aircross for performance. Of course I'm not saying that. If you want a fast car, you'll go and buy a fast car. But in terms of usability, having that extra power, having that extra torque, surely that would just make the car a bit more usable. I don't know, maybe if you want the 100 brake horsepower diesel, fair play, but if I was going to buy a diesel one of these, it wouldn't be this one, it would be the 120. The gearbox is a 5-speed manual, and it exacerbates the performance situation really, because the gear ratios are quite long. So as soon as you accelerate and change gear, the revs drop off and you've got to wait for that torque to build again. But it does do one thing quite well, and that's the fact that at 60, 70 miles an hour, you're cruising around at 2,000 RPM, which, if you're buying a diesel one of these, is probably what you want. The more powerful diesel, though, gets the 6-speed manual gearbox rather than the 5-speed, and that's a new gearbox, and I can tell you from experience that it's a nicer gearbox to use. The steering is light, quite slow, and a little bit vague. And the vague bit is annoying, but I kind of understand why it's light and why it's slow. And that's because Citroen want the overall character of this car to be one of comfort. So if you had super quick, super heavy steering, it wouldn't really fit. The suspension is soft, which means in turn that there's quite a bit of roll, but actually has a decent amount of grip, and it's comfortable. And after all, comfort is what Citroen want with this car. Although it's not quite as comfortable as the new Citroen C4 Cactus. I know because I was driving that car a week ago, and that car has new progressive hydraulic cushions in the suspension. It's a new system for Citroen, they haven't used it before, and essentially it makes the car incredibly comfortable, weirdly comfortable, comfortable to the point that you are aiming for potholes to try and see if you can unsettle the car. This car, although still very new, doesn't have that suspension. It probably will at some point, but right now it doesn't. So it's comfortable, but it's not as good as the Cactus. One feature I do quite like the idea of is a system called grip control. It's a £400 option in this car, And essentially what it does is it changes how the traction control operates. And it's a system that you can get in Citroens and Peugeots. I had it in a Peugeot 2008 a few weeks ago. Now obviously you are not going to drive this car off-road. It is not a 4x4, so please don't do that. That would be quite foolish. But it's nice to have a selection of traction control presets if you're driving across a wet field or in snow. And speaking of snow, when I had that Peugeot 2008 a few weeks ago, it had grip control, and one day I opened my door to find snow, which gave me a chance to test the snow mode, and actually it does work. It allows you to get up slippery hills or just get through snow when otherwise the wheels would be spinning and the engine would decide to kill all the power to stop the wheel spin, which isn't what you want, because then you'll just get stuck. Fast forward a few weeks to this car, and the same thing happens. And again, I've been able to try snow mode, and again, I've discovered it works. Obviously, you know, it's still front wheel drive, you can still get stuck, but it does help you. If I get one of these cars with grip control again, and it snows the night before again, I'll have no choice but to assume it's some kind of Peugeot Citroen conspiracy. The C3 Aircross can be had for £13,995, although the cheapest diesel is £17,220. This car, well, it's £22,230. There's no other way of saying it really, £22,000. I remember the car I drove on this car's launch was £21,000 and thinking, oh, that's a lot of money for one of these. And now this one is £22,000 for the low-powered diesel. Then again, it's all to do with spec, because this has got £3,000 worth of options. Yeah, I don't think I'd want to spend £3,000 on options. As for the way it looks, well, inside and out, it's Citroen C3, really. It's like if you had a burger bun and put 2 burgers in it rather than one. It's a Citroen C3 with an extra bit in the middle. That's all it is. If you're going to buy one of these, specifically if you're going to buy a diesel one of these, make sure you go easy on the options first of all, but also just spend the extra £700 and get the engine with a bit more power. Yes, you might get a little bit less MPG. Yes, it costs £700 more, but honestly I think it's worth it. It just makes the car more usable. You've got more power, you've got more torque. It'll just be nicer to drive. And you get a different gearbox. Do you like the C3 Aircross? Would you just have a normal Citroen C3? Let me know in the comments below, and make sure you like this video, make sure you comment, make sure you subscribe, and make sure you visit newmotoring.com. C3 Aircross, hello friend!